The millionaire's fiancée plans poisoning. Until the maid. Subscribe to the channel and comment where you are watching from. The cold wind of July blew through the windows of the mansion in Beverly Hills, one of the most upscale neighborhoods in Los Angeles, carrying with it the scent of cherry blossoms blooming in the well-kept gardens of the area. Linda Johnson, 52, adjusted her white apron over her navy blue uniform and took a deep breath, trying to calm the nerves that had accompanied her since she arrived at that imposing house 3 weeks ago. The kitchen where she worked was a dream for any homemaker. Absolute black granite countertops, imported appliances that she still handled with care, and a central island where she could prepare meals with all the necessary space. The stainless steel pots reflected the warm light of the pendant lamps hanging over the counter, creating an atmosphere that was both inviting and intimidating. "Linda, the family is already in the dining room," announced Sarah, the housekeeper who had worked there for over 10 years. She was a slender woman in her early 40s, with hair always tied up in a tight bun, and eyes that seemed to see everything happening in that mansion. Miss Victoria asked for soursop juice for her and for Mary. Linda nodded, drying her hands on the embroidered dish towel she had received from the previous employer. Victoria Smith had entered Richard Anderson's life, the owner of the house, about 7 months ago, and since then the family's routine had changed completely. She was an elegant woman, 35 years old, always well-dressed in designer clothes, with perfectly styled blonde hair and immaculate nails. She spoke with a studied sweetness that made anyone let their guard down. While preparing the juice, Linda couldn't shake off the conversation she had overheard earlier between Victoria and someone on the phone. The woman's voice had changed completely when she thought she was alone in the library, cold, calculating, discussing something about deadlines and definitive solutions. When she realized she was being watched, Victoria immediately returned to her usual syrupy tone. "Aunt Linda, my dad said there's chocolate mousse for dessert today," exclaimed Mary, appearing at the kitchen door like a little bird. At 9 years old, she was a clever girl, with curly brown hair that always escaped the clips and large, expressive eyes that resembled her deceased mother's. She wore a pink dress with white polka dots and pink sneakers, radiating an energy that contrasted with the heavy atmosphere that had settled over the house since Victoria's arrival. "That's right, my little flower. It's already chilled just the way you like it," Linda replied, caressing the girl's face tenderly. From the first day, she had felt a special connection with Mary. Perhaps it was the maternal instinct she had developed raising her 3 children alone, or the way the child sought affection and attention that she hadn't received enough since losing her mother. Richard Anderson was a 45-year-old man, owner of a chain of 5 medical clinics spread across the metropolitan area of Los Angeles. Tall, broad-shouldered, with graying hair at the temples, he had a tired look of someone carrying the weight of many responsibilities. After losing his wife Helen in a botched surgery 2 years ago, he had closed himself off even more in his work, leaving Mary in the care of nannies and maids. "Linda, can you serve the juice now? We're waiting," said Victoria, appearing at the kitchen door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was dressed in a tight black dress that accentuated her silhouette, and the French perfume she wore was so strong that it reached the kitchen before she did. "Of course, ma'am. It's ready," Linda replied, placing 3 crystal glasses on a silver tray. The juice had a tempting rosy color, but something about it unsettled her. She couldn't identify what it was, but there was a slightly different smell, almost imperceptible, that wasn't characteristic of the fruit. As she walked toward the dining room, Linda observed the refined decor of the house, paintings by local artists on the walls, rosewood furniture that seemed to have been passed down through generations, and crystals reflecting the golden light of the chandeliers. Everything there breathed tradition and good taste, a legacy of the Anderson family that dated back to the golden days of mining in California. In the dining room, Richard was sitting at the head of the mahogany table, distractedly fiddling with his phone while Mary played with her fork, pushing the sautéed vegetables from side to side on her plate. The room was illuminated by a crystal chandelier casting colorful reflections on the walls covered in classic wallpaper. "Finally," sighed Victoria, extending her hand, to grab the glass as soon as Linda approached. "I was dying of thirst, and Mary too, right, sweetheart?" The girl merely murmured a quiet yes, not taking her eyes off her plate. Linda noticed that she seemed quieter than usual, almost apathetic. In recent weeks, she had noticed that Mary was paler, with less energy to play, and frequently complained of headaches. As she handed the first glass to Victoria, Linda felt an inexplicable chill run down her spine. It was the same feeling she had years ago when her eldest son, Thomas, began to associate with the wrong crowd. An inner voice screamed that something was very wrong. "Thank you, Linda. You can leave the other glasses on the table," said Richard, without looking up from his phone. He was visibly stressed, with deep, dark circles under his eyes and slightly trembling hands. Linda knew he had increased the dosage of the tranquilizers prescribed by Dr. Michael Thompson, a man who visited the house with suspicious frequency. Just as she was preparing to hand the second glass to Mary, Linda was overcome by an inexplicable urgency. Her hands, which had held trays for decades without a single accident, began to tremble. The glass slipped from her fingers as if it had a life of its own, shattering on the marble floor with a crash that echoed throughout the room. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Mr. Richard. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Victoria. I don't know what came over me," exclaimed Linda, immediately kneeling down to pick up the shards. Her heart raced, but there was a strange sense of relief, as if she had done exactly what she needed to do. Victoria abruptly stood up from her chair, her face contorted in an expression of anger that she quickly tried to mask. "It's fine, Linda. Accidents happen," she said, but her tone had lost all previous sweetness. "Mary can drink water instead. She doesn't need juice." "No, let me make another juice quickly," insisted Linda, still gathering the pieces. "The girl needs to eat well." "I said she doesn't need it," Victoria retorted, louder than she intended. Richard finally looked up from his phone, frowning. "Calm down, Victoria. It's just juice," he said, confused by his fiancée's disproportionate reaction. "Linda, leave the shards for later. Sarah can clean that up." Mary watched everything in silence, her eyes wide. Linda locked eyes with the girl and saw a mix of relief and gratitude that confirmed her intuition. Something was very, very wrong in that house. That night, after finishing her kitchen duties, Linda went up to the small room at the back of the house that had been assigned to her. It was a simple but comfortable space, with a twin bed, a wooden wardrobe, and a window overlooking the backyard. She sat on the bed and picked up the notebook where she wrote down the family's favorite recipes. On a blank page, she wrote the date and began to record everything she had observed. The strange smell in the juice, Victoria's exaggerated reaction, Mary's growing paleness, Richard's increasingly strong medications. She didn't yet know what that information meant, but her maternal instinct told her that one day it would be important. Outside, the July wind continued to blow through the trees of Belvedere, whispering secrets yet to be uncovered. Trying again, the cook who saved a legacy. A story of silent courage, dangerous secrets, and unexpected love. On a cold July night, in an elegant mansion in the Belvedere neighborhood of Beverly Hills, the aroma of fresh rosemary filled the kitchen when the family's new cook noticed something. August arrived, bringing with it the dry winds typical of the Californian winter, along with a series of incidents that left Linda increasingly unsettled. It was a Saturday morning when the first accident occurred, marking the beginning of a pattern she would only identify weeks later. Mary had woken up with a rash covering her arms and face, small red spots that itched intensely and made the girl cry in despair. Dr. Henry Thompson, the family pediatrician, was called in a hurry and diagnosed a severe allergic reaction, possibly caused by some medication. "But how is that possible?" Richard asked, visibly worried, holding his daughter's hand as she continued to scratch. They were in the living room, where the doctor had improvised a checkup. The morning sun streamed through the stained glass windows, creating golden reflections on the mahogany furniture. "These things can happen, Richard," replied Dr. Henry, a short, chubby man in his 60s with a neatly trimmed grey beard. "Sometimes a child develops an allergy to medications they have used before. The important thing is to stop the cold medicine she was taking immediately." Linda, who had been called to prepare a calming tea, frowned. She had separated the girl's medications the night before, strictly following the instructions in the organizer box. The cold medicine Mary was taking was the same as always, the one she had used for months without any problems. "Victoria, did you mess with Mary's medications last night?" Richard asked, turning to his fiancée, who was elegantly seated in a leather armchair, wearing a beige Adidas tracksuit that cost more than Linda's monthly salary. "Of course not, darling," Victoria replied casually, but Linda noticed how her fingers nervously drummed on the arm of the chair. "You know I don't touch Mary's medications. That's your responsibility." I know," Richard murmured, running a hand through his greying hair. "It must have been my distraction. I've been very stressed with the problems at the clinic." Dr. Henry prescribed an antihistamine and recommended complete rest. After he left, Linda accompanied Mary to her room, a cozy space decorated in shades of pink and white, with a princess bed, shelves full of children's books, and stuffed animals scattered everywhere. The walls were covered with drawings the girl had made, and a large window overlooked the backyard garden. "Aunt Linda, I didn't take a different medicine," Mary whispered, holding the rag doll her mother had given her before she passed away. "I always take the same, that sweet syrup." "I know, sweetheart," Linda replied, adjusting the blanket over the girl. "Sometimes these things just happen. The important thing is for you to get better." But in truth, Linda was far from believing it was just a coincidence. That same night, when everyone was asleep, she went down to the kitchen and carefully examined Mary's medicine box. Using a small flashlight to avoid turning on the lights, she discovered that the cold medicine had been swapped for another similar one, but from a different brand, one that contained a component to which the girl was allergic, as noted in her medical file stuck to the refrigerator door. A week later, it was the turn of the accident on the stairs. Mary had gone down for breakfast when she slipped on the marble steps, banging her knee and scraping her elbow. Victoria, who was supposedly supervising the girl's fall, was attributed to her being distracted for a moment to answer her phone. "Oh my God, Mary, how did you manage to slip?" exclaimed Victoria, rushing to help the child who was crying at the bottom of the stairs. "I told you to come down slowly." Linda, who was in the kitchen preparing coffee, heard the noise and ran to the living room. She found Mary on the floor with a bleeding knee and Victoria kneeling beside her, looking genuinely concerned. Richard had left early for the hospital and did not witness the incident. "Let me see, sweetheart," said Linda, kneeling down to examine the injuries. They were superficial scratches, but her knee had hit the step hard, while, cleaning the wounds with hydrogen peroxide, she noticed something strange. There was a greasy, almost imperceptible substance on the first 3 steps of the staircase. "Aunt, I felt my foot slip like it had soap on it," murmured Mary, still sobbing. "Soap? That can't be, dear." "Sarah cleaned the stairs last night with the usual product," Victoria quickly replied. You must have stepped wrong." Later, when Sarah arrived for work, Linda sought her out in the laundry room. It was a small but functional space, with imported washers and dryers, organized shelves of cleaning products, and a window overlooking the backyard. "Sarah, did you clean the stairs last night?" Linda asked, pretending to arrange some towels on the shelf. "I did, Mrs. Johnson. As always, just with a damp cloth and neutral detergent. Why do you ask?" "Mary slipped this morning. She said it felt like there was soap." Sarah frowned, her hands stopping from folding the clothes. She was an observant woman who had cared for that house for 10 years with the dedication of someone who considered it her own family. "That's really strange, Mrs. Johnson. I never use soap on the stairs to avoid accidents, and last night when I finished cleaning, the stairs were completely dry. Did you see anyone else go up there afterward?" "Well, I left around 8 in the evening. But before I left, I saw Mrs. Victoria going down to the kitchen. She said she was going to get a glass of water." The two women exchanged glances, a mutual understanding passing between them without the need for words. Both had noticed subtle changes in the house since Victoria's arrival, but neither dared to verbalize their suspicions. The third incident occurred 2 weeks later, during Sunday lunch. The family had gathered in the dining room to enjoy a delicious roasted chicken with okra that Linda had prepared, accompanied by rice with pequi and banana farofa, typical dishes that Richard loved and that reminded him of his childhood on the family farm. Mary had eaten normally, even complimenting the special seasoning Linda had used on the chicken, but about an hour after lunch, she began to feel ill, nausea, vomiting and diarrhea that left her weak and dehydrated. "It must have been something she ate," said Victoria, holding a damp cloth to the girl's forehead as she lay on the sofa in the TV room. "Maybe the chicken wasn't well preserved." Linda felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. In over 20 years of cooking, she had never served spoiled food. She always checked the expiration dates of all ingredients, smelled the meats before seasoning, and followed all the hygiene and preservation rules she had learned from her own mother. "The chicken was fresh, ma'am," she said, trying to remain calm. "I bought it yesterday at lunchtime from Mr. Johnson's butcher, the one the family always uses." "I'm not doubting you, Linda," Victoria replied with a condescending smile. "But sometimes these things happen. Maybe the fridge isn't cooling properly." Richard, who had eaten the exact same food without feeling anything, took Mary to the hospital as a precaution. The doctors diagnosed a mild food poisoning and prescribed homemade electrolyte solution and a liquid diet for 2 days. That night, after everyone had retired, Linda went down to the kitchen to check the refrigerator. It was functioning perfectly, at the ideal temperature. She examined all the utensils she had used to prepare lunch, all impeccably clean. It was then that she noticed something that made her freeze. The jar of special seasoning she had prepared for the chicken was slightly out of place from where she always kept it. She picked up the jar and smelled the contents. Besides the usual spices, garlic, onion, salt, black pepper, saffron, and fine herbs, there was a strange, almost imperceptible smell that she couldn't identify. It was something chemical, different from any spice or preservative she knew. With her heart racing, Linda searched the pantry for any cleaning product that might have accidentally fallen into the seasoning. She found nothing out of place. But when she opened the drawer where Victoria kept her headache medicine, she found a small, nearly empty bottle of a medication she didn't recognize. The label was partially removed, but it still read, "Concentrated Natural Laxative." She sat on the kitchen island stool, her legs trembling. It was no longer a coincidence. It couldn't be. Someone was deliberately harming Mary, and all the evidence pointed to Victoria. She opened the notebook where she wrote down recipes and, on a new page, began to write with trembling handwriting. August 12th. Allergy to medications. 19th. Slip on the stairs. Greasy substance. 26th. Food poisoning. Seasoning adulterated with laxative. She closed the notebook and hid it at the bottom of the utensil drawer behind the brownie molds. She didn't yet know what to do with that information, but one thing was clear. She needed to be even more vigilant. Mary's life could depend on it. Outside, the August wind continued to blow through the streets of Belvedere, carrying with it the dark secrets of that seemingly perfect mansion. September arrived with the first flowers of the yellow ipe trees blooming along the streets of Beverly Hills, heralding the approach of spring. It was Mary's birthday, who would turn 10 on the 15th, and the whole house was in a frenzy with preparations for the party. Victoria had insisted on organizing a grand celebration in the mansion's garden, complete with professional decorations, a full buffet, and a guest list that included the most influential families of Beverly Hills. "I want it to be an unforgettable party," Victoria said over the phone with the event company, pacing back and forth in the living room while gesturing dramatically. She was wearing a white linen outfit that accentuated her artificial tan and high heels that made a characteristic noise on the marble floor. "The girl deserves the best, doesn't she?" Linda observed from a distance, pretending to arrange the flower vases in the room but paying attention to every word. There was something about the way Victoria referred to Mary. Always the girl. Never by name, never with genuine affection in her voice. It was as if she were talking about an object, not a child who would soon be her stepdaughter. Mary, in turn, did not show much enthusiasm for the preparations. She was sitting on the living room floor, distractedly playing with her colored pencils, drawing in a notebook she had received from school. Her cheeks, once chubby and rosy, were now thinner, and there were subtle dark circles under her large, expressive eyes. "Aunt Linda, are you going to make my birthday cake?" the girl asked, looking up from her drawing. "I really wanted your chocolate cake with chocolate frosting, just like Mommy used to make." "Of course, sweetheart," Linda replied, sitting on the floor next to the child. "It will be the most delicious cake you've ever had, you can be sure." "Miss Victoria hired a full buffet, dear," interrupted Victoria herself, who had finished the call and approached them. "There will be a beautiful display cake, 3 tiers high, decorated with pink whipped cream and sugar flowers. No need to trouble Linda." "But I want Aunt Linda's cake," Mary insisted, with the typical stubbornness of a 9-year-old. "Hers is tastier." Victoria forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "All right, then. You can have 2 cakes, one for decoration and another for eating." That afternoon, while Victoria went out to finalize the last details of the party, Linda took the opportunity to do a thorough cleaning in Richard's office. It was a masculine and traditional space, with wooden shelves filled with medical and business books, an antique mahogany desk inherited from his grandfather, and framed diplomas and certifications that attested to the professional success of the Anderson family. While cleaning the desk drawer, where Richard kept personal documents, Linda found something that made her stop immediately. Bank statements for an account she didn't recognize, in the name of Victoria Smith. The papers were crumpled, as if they had been thrown in the trash and then retrieved. With trembling hands, she examined the documents. The numbers were alarming. Debts of over $200,000 in online gambling, loans from known loan sharks in the metropolitan area, and a growing debt that seemed to have started months before Victoria met Richard. There were also receipts for transfers to a law firm specializing in inheritance law, Smith and Associates, a name she recognized from the news for being involved in scandals over family disputes. "What are you doing here?" Victoria's cold voice made Linda jump, dropping the papers on the floor. The woman was standing in the office doorway with an expression Linda had never seen before, dangerous, calculating, stripped of any mask of sweetness. I was cleaning, ma'am," Linda stammered, quickly kneeling to pick up the documents. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disturb anything important." Victoria entered the office and closed the door behind her. The click of the lock echoed in the silent room like a gunshot. She approached Linda, who was still on the floor, and stared at her with eyes that seemed like sharp blades. "Linda, you are a very efficient employee," she said with a terrifying calmness. "And I like employees who know their place, who understand the difference between cleaning a house and meddling in matters that don't concern them." "Yes, ma'am, I understand," Linda replied, struggling to get up. Her legs were shaky, and her heart was pounding so hard she was sure Victoria could hear it. "I really hope you do, because it would be very bad if you started spreading gossip about papers you found here. Malicious people could misinterpret it, don't you think? They might even suggest that an employee was, how can I put it, appropriating private information to blackmail their employers." The threat was crystal clear. Linda swallowed hard and nodded, but inside she felt a mix of fear and determination growing. That woman was clearly threatening her, which only confirmed her suspicions that something very serious was happening. "You can continue with your work," Victoria said, opening the door. "And Linda, I think it's best if you don't mention our little chat to Richard. He's been very stressed, and he doesn't need to worry about silly misunderstandings." After Victoria left, Linda finished cleaning with trembling hands. She couldn't get the numbers she had seen on the statements out of her head. $200,000 was more money than she could ever save in her entire working life. What kind of person could accumulate such a debt? And why was Victoria looking for a lawyer specializing in inheritances? That night, after everyone had retired, Linda went down to the kitchen to get a glass of water. It was almost midnight when she heard voices coming from the living room. She immediately recognized Victoria's voice, but there was another person, a man speaking softly, with an accent she couldn't identify. She discreetly approached the door that separated the kitchen from the living room, trying to listen to the conversation without being discovered. "You can't delay any longer," the man was saying. "My clients are losing their patience. You promised you'd have the money by October." "I know, Richard," Victoria replied, her voice tinged with anxiety that completely contrasted with her usual demeanor. "But things are more complicated than I imagined. The will leaves everything to the girl, not to him." "Then change the will. Didn't you say he would do anything you ask?" "It's not that simple. He might be in love, but he's not an idiot. And his family is watching, especially his mother. She never liked me." There was a pause, and Linda heard the sound of a lighter and the smell of cigarette smoke wafting into the kitchen. "Look, Victoria, you have two options. Either you gain access to the girl's money, or you'll have to find another way to settle your debts. My clients are not known for their patience." "And what if something happened to the child?" Victoria asked, her coldness sending chills down Linda's spine. "An accident, perhaps. In those cases, wouldn't the inheritance automatically go to the father?" "It depends on how the will was drafted," the man replied, seemingly unfazed by the nature of the question. "But generally, yes. In the absence of the primary heir, the assets go to the surviving spouse or the closest relative. And what if the father also had an accident later? Then you would have full access." "But Victoria, you're talking about very dangerous things. This is no longer just a matter of money." "I know what I'm doing, Richard. I just need a little more time." Linda heard footsteps approaching the kitchen and quickly ran silently to the back stairs, rushing to her room with her heart racing. She closed the door and sat on the bed, her hands trembling so much that she could barely hold the notebook where she recorded her observations. With shaky handwriting, she wrote, "September 10th. Victoria owes a lot of money to loan sharks. She spoke with a man about accidents involving Mary and Richard. She wants the girl's inheritance." She closed the notebook and hid it under the mattress. Now she was sure. Mary was in mortal danger, and she was the only one who knew it. The weight of that responsibility fell on her shoulders like a mountain. Outside, an owl hooted in the chilly September dawn, as if it were a grim warning of what was to come. 2 days later, during the final preparations for the birthday party, Linda made a discovery that confirmed her worst fears. While cleaning the guest bathroom, she found an empty box for a medication called syrup for inducing vomiting. A syrup used to induce vomiting in cases of poisoning. The party would be on Saturday, only 3 days left. Saturday, September 15th, dawned with a flawless blue sky and a pleasant temperature, promising a perfect day for an outdoor celebration. Since 7 in the morning, the decoration team had been working frantically, transforming the mansion's backyard into a fairy tale setting, with arches of colourful flowers, round tables covered with pink and gold tablecloths, and a small stage where a group of clowns hired specifically for the occasion would perform. Linda watched all the activity from the kitchen window while preparing the chocolate cake that Mary had requested. Her hands worked automatically, separating eggs, sifting flour, measuring sugar. But her mind was on high alert. She had slept poorly in the past few nights, haunted by the conversation she overheard between Victoria and the mysterious man. "Aunt Linda, can I lick the bowl?" Mary asked, appearing in the kitchen dressed in unicorn pajamas. Even though it was her birthday, the girl did not show the typical joy of a child about to turn 10. Her dark circles seemed deeper, and there was a profound sadness in her eyes that broke Linda's heart. "Of course you can, my little flower," Linda replied, handing her the bowl with the leftover sweet batter. "So, are you excited for your party?" Mary shrugged, licking the spoon with little enthusiasm. "I guess so, but there will be a lot of people I don't even know. Victoria invited her friends' kids, and they're all older than me. What about your school friends?" "Oh, they're coming too, but Victoria said they can't stay too long because the party is elegant," Mary said, making air quotes with her fingers. "Aunt, do you think Mommy would have liked this party?" Linda felt her heart tighten. Helena Anderson had been a simple and caring woman who preferred intimate family gatherings to large social events. She would certainly have organized a very different celebration for her daughter. "Your mommy wanted you to be happy, dear, and I'm sure that wherever she is, she's rooting for you. To have a wonderful day," Linda said, stroking the girl's curly hair. Around 2 in the afternoon, the first guests began to arrive. The garden filled with about 40 people, families from the neighborhood, colleagues of Richard, and some children from Mary's school. Victoria circulated among the groups wearing a floral midi dress, her hair perfectly styled and her makeup impeccable, masterfully playing the role of the devoted stepmother. "Mary is growing up so fast," she commented to the other mothers. "Sometimes I think she sees me as a second mother, don't you, dear?" she said, pulling the girl, close with a hug that felt more like a trap. Richard, wearing a navy blue polo shirt and beige chinos, tried to maintain cordiality with the guests, but Linda noticed that he seemed more distracted than usual. His hands trembled slightly as he greeted people, and she discreetly saw him swallow 2 pills he took from a bottle in his pocket. The party followed its perfectly organized schedule: clown performances, directed games, and finally it was time for the birthday song. The decorative cake was brought in. A table on wheels drew gasps of admiration from the guests. It was truly impressive, covered in pink whipped cream and decorated with sugar flowers and tiny ballerinas. "And there's also this one, made especially by our dear Linda," announced Victoria, pointing to the simple chocolate cake on a side table. "Mary specifically requested it, didn't you, sweetheart?" Her tone was sweet, but Linda sensed the subtle humiliation in the way Victoria presented her homemade cake next to the professional masterpiece. Some guests looked down condescendingly at Linda's simple creation, but Mary rushed to her. "This is my real cake," the girl exclaimed, hugging Linda around the waist. "It's just like the one Mommy used to make." After singing Happy Birthday and Mary blowing out the 10 candles, snacks were served: gourmet hors d'oeuvres, salmon sandwiches, mini quiches and fresh juices. Linda circulated among the tables, assisting the hired waitstaff and keeping everything organized, but her eyes never left Mary. It was then that she noticed something strange. Victoria had approached the table where the slices of chocolate cake were, and when she thought no one was watching, she pulled a small vial from her pocket. With quick, precise movements, she poured a few drops of a clear liquid onto the piece reserved for Mary, a larger slice with extra frosting, marked with a special decorative pick. Linda's blood ran cold. On impulse, she accidentally knocked over the tray of disposable cups she was carrying, creating a loud distraction that made all the guests turn in her direction. "Oh my God! Sorry for the noise!" she exclaimed, feigning desperation as she bent down to pick up the cups. In the ensuing chaos, she managed to discreetly swap the poison piece for another, hiding the suspicious slice in a napkin inside her apron pocket. "What a clumsy move, Linda," Victoria commented with a forced smile. "You've been so nervous lately." "Yeah, it's just the exhaustion, Ma'am," Linda murmured, feeling sweat trickle down her back. "Sorry for the trouble." The party continued without further incidents until around 6 in the evening, when the guests began to say their goodbyes. Mary had enjoyed herself with her school friends, but Linda noticed that she ate very little and seemed constantly drowsy. After the last guests left, the family gathered in the living room to open presents. There were imported dolls, video games, designer clothes, and children's books. Mary politely thanked each guest for their gift, but without the genuine enthusiasm of a happy child. "And this is my special gift for you," Victoria said, handing over a small box wrapped in golden paper. "Something that belonged to your mummy." Mary opened the box and found a delicate gold necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. It was truly beautiful, but there was something about the way Victoria smiled at the girl's reaction that made Linda uncomfortable. "Was this your mummy's?" Mary asked, reverently touching the pendant. "Yes, dear. She wanted you to have it when you turned 10, Victoria lied smoothly. "You can put it on now if you want." Linda knew it was a lie. She had cared for Helena during her last days in the hospital, and the woman had entrusted her with all the jewelry she wanted to leave for her daughter. This necklace was not among them. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Linda went down to the kitchen and carefully examined the piece of cake she had saved. Using a magnifying glass she found in the utensil drawer, she could see tiny transparent crystals mixed in with the chocolate frosting, something that definitely did not belong in the original recipe. She wrapped the piece of cake in plastic wrap and hid it in the freezer behind a bag of frozen peas. It was concrete evidence that someone had attempted to poison Mary on her own birthday. In her notebook, she wrote in firm handwriting, "September 15th, birthday. Victoria put an unknown substance in Mary's cake. I managed to swap it before she ate it, sample stored in the freezer." She closed the notebook and for the first time in weeks felt a twinge of hope. She had physical evidence now. The problem was that she still didn't know whom to trust or how to use this information without putting herself and Mary in even greater danger. Outside, the garden was still decorated with the remnants of the party, the flowers wilting under the cold light of the crescent moon. To any outside observer, it had been a perfect celebration. But Linda knew that beneath all that appearance of happiness, something very sinister was unfolding. And worst of all was the growing certainty that this had only been the beginning. October arrived, bringing with it the first rains of spring and a subtle but noticeable change in the behavior of the entire household. Richard seemed increasingly dependent on the medications prescribed by Dr. Michael Thompson, his psychiatrist, and Linda began to notice a disturbing pattern in the consultations he was having. It was a cloudy Thursday afternoon when Dr. Thompson made his third visit in 2 weeks. a tall, thin man in his 50s, with dark hair slicked back with gel and gold-rimmed glasses that gave him an intellectual air. He always wore expensive suits and carried an Italian leather briefcase that he never let go of. "Richard, my friend, you look better today," he said, greeting the businessman in the living room. His voice was velvety, with an accent that Linda identified as being from the countryside of São Paulo. "How have you been feeling with the new dosage?" "Better, doctor," Richard replied. But Linda, who was organizing the books on the nearby shelf, noticed that his hands trembled as he picked up the glass of water. "I sleep better at night, and the anxiety has decreased a bit." "Great, great. And Victoria, how has she been coping with all the stress of the relationship?" Linda frowned. Why would a psychiatrist be specifically asking about Victoria? She pretended to be busy organizing the decorative items, but Richard paid attention to every word. "She has been an angel, doctor," he said, genuine gratitude in his voice. "I don't know what I would do without her and Mary, especially after the recent incidents with the girl." "Oh, yes. Tell me about those incidents." Linda felt her blood run cold. Richard began to recount Mary's accidents, the allergies, the falls, the discomforts, as if they were natural and concerning events, not realizing the sinister pattern she had identified. "It's indeed concerning," Dr. Thompson murmured, jotting notes in a small notebook. "Children who lose their mother early sometimes develop psychosomatic symptoms. She may be unconsciously rejecting Victoria's presence." "Do you think so?" Richard asked, visibly distressed. "It's a possibility. It might be worth considering psychiatric treatment for Mary as well. I can refer you to a colleague who specializes in pediatrics." Linda nearly dropped the vase she was holding. They wanted to medicate Mary too? A child of only 10 years. "I don't know if that's necessary, doctor." Richard hesitated. "She's just a child." "My dear, untreated childhood traumas can lead to serious issues in adulthood, and if we keep seeing these accidents, it might be better to prevent than to remedy." At that moment, Victoria entered the room carrying a tray with coffee and homemade cookies that Linda had prepared. She was wearing a navy blue skirt and blouse set that made her look like a successful executive, and her hair was styled in an elegant bun. "Dr. Thompson, so good to see you," she said, with a radiant smile that Linda had never seen directed at anyone else. "I brought you some coffee. I know you love Linda's cheese puffs." "Victoria, dear," the doctor replied, standing up to greet her with a kiss on the cheek that lasted a little longer than appropriate. "You look radiant as always." Linda watched the interaction between the two and felt a chill run down her spine. There was an intimacy there that went far beyond a doctor-family relationship. The way Victoria discreetly touched the doctor's arm, how he held her hand for a few seconds longer, the look they exchanged when they thought Richard wasn't watching. "I was just discussing with Richard the possibility of starting psychological support for Mary," Dr. Thompson said, sitting back down. "I think that's an excellent idea," Victoria readily agreed. "The girl has been very rebellious lately. Just yesterday, she refused to take the vitamins I bought especially for her." This was news to Linda. Mary had never mentioned new vitamins to her, and she always kept a close eye on everything the girl ingested. "What vitamins are those?" Richard asked. "Oh, they're some children's supplements I saw at the pharmacy, with iron and B vitamins. I thought it would be good to give her more energy," Victoria explained casually. "Very well thought out," praised Dr. Thompson. "Children in their growth phase really need proper supplementation." After the doctor left, Linda went upstairs to tidy the rooms. In Richard and Victoria's room, a luxurious space decorated in shades of beige and gold, with a king-size bed and a closet that looked more like a clothing store, she found something that confirmed her suspicions. On Victoria's bedside table, partially hidden under a decor magazine, was a cell phone she had never seen before. It was a simple device, different from the gold iPhone Victoria usually used. Driven by impulse, Linda checked to see if anyone was around and quickly examined the device. The phone was unlocked, and the first thing she saw was recent messages. Her heart nearly stopped when she read, "Michael, I increased his dosage as we agreed. In 2 weeks, he will be completely dependent." Victoria, "Great." And the girl, "Michael, you need to be more careful. The accidents are drawing too much attention." Victoria, "The maid is suspicious. We might have to get rid of her too." Michael, "One thing at a time, love. First we deal with the child, then with him, and only then do we think about other people." Linda felt her legs go weak. Her suspicions were real, worse than she had imagined. Victoria was not acting alone. The very doctor who was supposed to care for Richard was helping to destroy the family. Quickly, she took photos of the messages with her own phone, being careful not to make noise. There were more conversations, but she heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly put the phone back where it was, pretending to adjust the pillows when Victoria entered the room. "What are you doing here?" Victoria asked, her voice cold enough to send shivers down Linda's spine. "Tidying the room, ma'am, as I always do," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I didn't ask you to tidy my room today." "I'm sorry, Mom. I thought—" "Linda," Victoria interrupted, approaching her with calculated steps. "You have children, don't you?" The question caught Linda off guard. "Yes, Mom, 3. "And do they know where you work?" The tone of the question was clearly threatening. Linda felt cold sweat trickle down her back, but maintained her composure. "They do. It would be a shame if something happened to them because of their mother's excessive curiosity," Victoria said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You understand me, don't you?" "I understand, ma'am," Linda murmured, leaving the room with trembling legs. That night, locked in her small room, Linda examined the photos she had taken of the messages. Now she had concrete evidence of a conspiracy to kill Mary and Richard, but she also knew that her own life was in danger. Worse still, Victoria had threatened her children. She thought about going to the police, but who would believe the word of a maid against a respected doctor and a woman of society? She needed more evidence, a better plan. It was then that she remembered Mrs. Carmen Anderson, Richard's mother. She was a 72-year-old woman, widow of the founder of the family's medical clinics, an influential and respected woman in the Beverly Hills community. The next day, during her break, Linda took the bus to the Beverly Hills neighborhood, where Mrs. Carmen lived in an elegant house overlooking the Santa Monica Mountains. She was a petite but imposing woman, with white hair always styled in a neat bun, dressed in classic clothes and wearing discreet yet valuable jewelry. "Linda, what a surprise," said Mrs. Carmen upon opening the door. "Come in, dear. What brings you here?" "Mrs. Carmen, I need to talk to you about something very serious. It's about your Richard and Mary." The expression on the lady's face changed immediately. "Is something wrong? Are they okay?" "Physically they are, but I discovered some things you need to know." For the next 2 hours, Linda shared everything: the strange accidents, Victoria's doubts, the conversation with the loan shark, the messages on the phone, the threats she had received. She showed the photos of the messages and handed over the poisoned cake she had kept in the freezer. Mrs. Carmen listened in silence, her face growing more serious with each revelation. "My God," she murmured at the end. "I always knew there was something wrong with that woman, but I never imagined. Linda, you were very brave to come to me." "I didn't know what to do, Mrs. Carmen. I'm afraid for Mary, but also for my children." "You did the right thing. Now we will act, but very carefully. We can't alert them that we know everything." Mrs. Carmen picked up the phone and dialed a number. "Officer Johnson, this is Carmen Anderson. I need to speak with you about a delicate matter. It's about my family." Help was on the way, but Linda knew the coming days would be the most dangerous of all. November arrived, with the typical spring rain showers of California, and with it, an almost palpable tension hung over the mansion in Beverly Hills. Officer Fernando Johnson, an experienced man in his mid-50s, specialized in family crimes, had discreetly initiated an investigation based on Linda's testimony and the evidence she had managed to gather. It was a rainy Monday morning when he arrived at the house, pretending to be a representative from the IRS interested in checking some inconsistencies in the medical clinic's taxes. Officer Johnson was of medium height, with a discreet baldness disguised by a military cut, and always dressed in dark suits that gave him a serious yet trustworthy appearance. "Mr. Anderson, thank you for having me at your home," he said, sitting in the living room while examining fictitious papers in a folder. "It's just a routine check, but we prefer to handle these matters discreetly." Richard, visibly nervous and with hands trembling more than usual, tried to answer the questions while Victoria stood by his side, playing the role of the supportive partner. She wore a black, midi dress with white lace details, her hair down, and natural makeup that made her look even younger and more innocent. "Of course, officer. Inspector," Richard stammered. "All our documents are in order. We have very serious accounting." Linda served coffee and cookies, taking advantage of each trip to the living room to observe Victoria's reactions. The woman maintained a calm demeanor, but Linda noticed how her fingers nervously drummed on the armchair and how she avoided looking directly at the officer. "And you are?" Officer Johnson asked, addressing Victoria with a cordial smile. "Victoria Smith, Richard's fiancée," she replied, extending her hand with studied elegance. "I've been living here for a few months and helped take care of his daughter." "That's great. And how are you adapting to the new family?" "Wonderfully well. Mary is a lovely girl despite some typical behavioral challenges of her age," Victoria replied with a sigh that sounded maternal. "Behavioral challenges?" "Well, she lost her mother very early and sometimes has difficulty accepting female authority figures. We've had a few episodes, domestic accidents that concern us." Officer Johnson took some notes, but Linda noticed he was paying more attention to Victoria's body language than to her words. After about an hour of seemingly routine conversation about tax issues, the officer said goodbye, but not before discreetly handing Linda a small card as he passed through the kitchen. "If you need anything, this is my direct number," he whispered, pretending to thank her for the coffee. That same afternoon, while Victoria had gone out for a dermatologist appointment, Linda discovered that Mary was in her room, apparently sleeping since lunch. The girl had eaten very little, just a few spoonfuls of vegetable soup and a small piece of homemade bread. And when Linda went upstairs to check on her, she found the child in a deep, almost unnatural sleep. "Mary, sweetheart," she called softly, shaking the girl's shoulder. The child opened her eyes with difficulty, as if fighting against an invisible weight. Her pupils were dilated, and she looked confused about where she was. "Aunt Linda," she murmured, her voice thick. "Why am I so tired? I feel like I ran a lot." "Did you eat anything different today, dear?" Just the special vitamins that Victoria gave me this morning," Mary said, yawning deeply. "She said they were new, tastier." Linda felt an alarm go off in her head. "What vitamins, my love? Can you show me?" Mary weakly pointed to the bedside table, where there was a small amber glass bottle with a handwritten label. "Special vitamins, Mary, 2 capsules in the morning." With trembling hands, Linda examined the bottle. The capsules were different from any children's vitamin she knew. Too large, with a white powder inside that didn't seem vitamin-like, and there was a slightly medicinal smell that she recognized but couldn't fully identify. "Mary, dear, from now on you won't take those vitamins without me being present, okay?" Linda said, putting the bottle in her pocket. Linda Johnson sighed as she removed her apron. All right, Auntie, but Victoria is going to be upset. Leave Victoria to me. Now you rest a little longer, and soon I'll bring you a tasty snack. That night, Linda called the number Officer Johnson had left. He answered on the second ring. Officer, it's Linda. I found something else. Go ahead. Some strange vitamins that Victoria is giving to Mary. The girl was out of it all afternoon. Keep a sample and meet me tomorrow at the cafe on Bahia Street at 2 in the afternoon. I'll have it analyzed. What if she notices it's missing? Just take one capsule and say it fell on the floor. Can you do that? I can do that. The next morning, Linda executed the plan. During breakfast, when Victoria went to get the vitamins for Mary, Linda pretended to trip and bump into her, causing a capsule to accidentally fall to the floor and roll under the refrigerator. "Oh, what a pain!" Victoria complained, crouching down to look for the lost capsule. "These vitamins are so expensive." "Sorry, Mum, let me look." "For it," Linda said, quickly kneeling and making motions as if she was searching under the refrigerator. "Oh, I can't find it. It must have rolled off somewhere." "Forget it. Mary will just take one today." But Linda had already pocketed the capsule that had fallen. In the afternoon, at the cafe on Bahia Street, a traditional establishment in downtown Beverly Hills, with marble tables and a constant flow of lawyers and public servants, she met Officer Johnson. The place was perfect for a discreet conversation, with the noise of chatter masking any suspicion. "Very well, Linda," he said, putting the capsule in a small plastic bag. "I'll send it to the lab. I'll have the results in 2 days. And now, what do I do?" "Keep observing, but without taking risks. If you feel you're in danger, leave the house immediately and call me." "And Mary?" "She's being watched. I have 2 agents doing discreet rounds in the area. But Linda, it's very important that you continue acting normally if they suspect we've discovered the plan." "I understand." Back at the mansion, Linda found Victoria on the phone in the living room, speaking in a low voice. Upon seeing Linda arrive, the woman quickly ended the call. "Where have you been?" she asked, with a tone more aggressive than usual. "I went to the bank to pay some bills, ma'am," Linda lied. "I have the receipt if you want to see it." "No need, but next time let me know before you leave." That night, Linda was awakened by voices coming from downstairs. It was almost 3 in the morning when she quietly descended the stairs and heard Victoria talking on the phone in the kitchen. "I can't wait any longer, Michael. The situation is getting complicated. Today there was an inspector here asking strange questions, and the maid is getting too clever." Linda hid behind the slightly open door, her heart pounding so hard she feared being heard. "I understand you want to be careful, but the loan sharks won't wait indefinitely," Victoria continued. "Either we do this next week or I'll have to disappear before it's too late." There was a long pause. "All right, Thursday then. During the outing at the lake you suggested. It seems natural. A child who drowned while playing." Linda had to cover her mouth with her hands to avoid screaming. Thursday was just 3 days away, and Lake Hollywood, one of the most famous tourist spots in Beverly Hills, would be the chosen scene for Mary's murder. "And after that," Victoria continued, "how long until we resolve his problem too?" Another pause. "Perfect. A month is enough time not to raise suspicions." Linda rushed back to her room and immediately called Officer Johnson. "Officer, they're going to kill Mary on Thursday at Lake Hollywood." "Calm down, Linda. Tell me everything." After hearing the details of the phone conversation, the officer was silent for a few seconds. "All right. Now we're going to catch them all. In the act. But you need to act normally until Thursday. Can you do that?" "I can. But what if—" "Trust me, Linda. On Thursday this story ends." Outside, the November rain continued to fall, washing the streets of Beverly Hills as if preparing the city for a new chapter about to begin. Thursday, November 28th, dawned with a partly cloudy sky that allowed some rays of sunshine to peek through the scattered clouds. It was exactly the kind of weather that Victoria had said was perfect for a trip to the lake during breakfast. Linda had barely slept the previous 2 nights, mentally rehearsing every move she would need to make to protect Mary without raising suspicion. "I'm so glad the weather cleared up," Victoria exclaimed, serving fresh orange juice to Richard and Mary. She was dressed in light jeans and a white cotton blouse, her hair tied in a youthful ponytail that made her look like a college student on a weekend outing. "Mary is going to love feeding the fish at the lake." Mary, sitting at the breakfast table, was distractedly playing with the French bread on her plate. Since Linda had managed to prevent her from taking the vitamins, the girl had regained some energy, but still looked thinner and paler than she should. "Dad, can Aunt Linda come with us?" the girl asked, looking hopefully at Richard. "Oh, sweetheart, Linda has a lot of work here at home," Victoria quickly said before Richard could respond. "Besides, it's a family outing, just the 3 of us." "But she's almost family too," Mary insisted, with the typical stubbornness of children. "She takes care of me better than anyone." Linda felt her heart tighten at the girl's innocent comment, but noticed how Victoria's face twitched for a fraction of a second before returning to a forced smile. "Of course, Linda is important to us, sweetheart," Richard said. Amidst the tensions that permeated the conversation, Linda said, "But today is a special day just for us, okay?" During the morning, while the family prepared for their outing, Linda received a discreet message from Officer Johnson. "All set. Agents are already positioned at the lake. Continue as normal." At 2 in the afternoon, Richard, Victoria and Mary left the mansion in the family's silver BMW. Linda waved from the kitchen window, pretending to be casual, but her stomach churned with anxiety. 15 minutes later, she headed to Lake Hollywood in a taxi, as she had arranged with the officer. Lake Hollywood was one of the postcards of Beverly Hills, an artificial body of water created in the 1940s, surrounded by important tourist spots like the House of Dance, the Church of St. Francis of Assisi, designed by Oscar Niemeyer, and the Museum of Art at the lake. It was a popular place for families on weekends, filled with cyclists, people walking, and children playing in the parks. Linda found Officer Johnson disguised as a fisherman on the lake's shore. Wearing a plaid shirt, a cap, and holding a fishing rod, 2 other agents, dressed as tourists, were seemingly photographing the church in the distance. "Where are they?" Linda asked, sitting on a nearby bench. "Over there, near the House of Dance," he replied, discreetly indicating a point in the distance. "Dr. Thompson arrived 10 minutes ago. He's pretending to have stumbled upon the family." Linda followed the officer's gaze and spotted Richard, Victoria, Mary, and a 4th man, presumably Dr. Thompson, walking along the lake's edge. Even from a distance she could see Mary running ahead, seemingly excited to be outdoors. "How are we proceeding?" "We'll wait for them to approach the water. The moment they try something against the girl, we act." The following minutes felt like hours. Linda watched through binoculars borrowed from the officer as the group slowly walked toward a more secluded area of the lake where there were fewer people. Victoria and Dr. Thompson were animatedly talking to Richard, who seemed relaxed and happy to be with family. "They're heading toward the old pier area," Officer Johnson murmured into the discreet microphone he carried. "Unit 2, approach from the right. Unit 3, circle from the left." Suddenly, Linda saw Mary moving closer to the edge of the lake, seemingly interested in watching the fish swimming near the surface. Victoria positioned herself behind the girl, while Dr. Thompson distracted Richard by pointing to something in the opposite direction. "Now!" shouted Officer Johnson. What happened in the following minutes was a confusion of screams, running, and sirens. Linda saw Victoria move even closer to Mary, her hands reaching toward the girl's back. At the exact moment she made the move to push the girl into the water, 3 agents emerged from the nearby bushes. "Police! Nobody move!" Victoria tried to step away from the lake's edge, pretending to be surprised by the sudden appearance of the officers, but it was too late. The hidden cameras had recorded everything, and Officer Johnson was already running toward the group with a commanding voice. "Victoria Smith and Dr. Michael Thompson, you are under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy." Richard stood frozen, not understanding what was happening. "What are you talking about? What is this story?" "Daddy!" Mary shouted, running into her father's arms, scared by all the commotion. "Richard!" Officer Johnson said, approaching him cautiously. "I'm Officer Fernando Johnson. Your mother contacted me 2 weeks ago. We have evidence that these people were planning to kill you and your daughter." "This is absurd!" Victoria shouted, still trying to maintain her facade. "Richard, darling, you're not going to believe this madness, are you?" But Dr. Thompson, realizing he was cornered, made a different decision. "Victoria, shut up. It's all over," he said, his hands trembling. "I don't want to be blamed alone for this whole mess." "Shut up, Michael," she retorted, but the doctor was already talking to the police. "She contacted me 6 months ago, Dr. Thompson confessed. She said she was in debt and needed the girl's inheritance. I'd been in love with her since we met years ago. I did everything she asked." Richard sank onto a nearby bench, still holding Mary in his lap. His face had lost all colour, and he looked alternately at Victoria, who now showed her true face with an expression of pure hatred, and at the doctor he considered a friend. But I trusted you," he murmured. "Michael, you helped me when Helena died. How could you?" "He was drugging you, Richard, officer," Johnson said gently. "The medications he prescribed were 3 times stronger than necessary. They wanted you to be dependent and confused." At that moment, Linda approached the group. Mary saw her and immediately extended her arms toward her. "Aunt Linda, you came." "I told you I would always take care of you, didn't I?" Linda replied, hugging the girl tightly as tears rolled down her face. "It was you," Victoria said, glaring at Linda with visceral hatred. "It was you who discovered everything." "I only protected an innocent child," Linda replied, with a firmness in her voice that she didn't know she possessed. "Something you will never understand." Victoria and Dr. Thompson were taken to the station in separate squad cars. Along the way, the agents discovered more evidence in the doctor's car: bottles of counterfeit medications, syringes, and a detailed plan of how Richard's accident would be staged a few weeks later. At the station, during the testimonies, the whole truth came to light. Victoria was actually Ana Beatriz Silva, a con artist who had changed her identity 3 times in the last 5 years. She always pulled the same scam. She would get close to wealthy widowers with small children, gain the family's trust, and then eliminate obstacles to access the inheritances. Dr. Thompson revealed that she had, after discovering through internet research that he had dated her in medical school years before, Richard used his old flame to convince her to participate in the scheme, promising that they would run away together abroad after getting the money. Richard underwent medical examinations that confirmed prolonged intoxication from medications. Mary was also examined, and the doctors found traces of sedatives and other substances that explained her constant weakness and frequent accidents. At the end of that dramatic day, when the dust settled and all testimonies were given, Richard found himself alone with Linda in the waiting room of the police station while Mary slept in his arms. "Linda," he said, his voice choked, "how can I ever thank you for what you did for us?" "You don't need to thank me for anything," she replied, stroking the hair of the sleeping girl. "I just did what any mother would do." "That's exactly why," Richard said, tears in his eyes. You were the mother that Mary needed when I couldn't protect her. That night, back at the mansion in Beverly Hills, the house felt completely different. The dark weight that had hung over the place had vanished, replaced by a sense of relief and a new beginning. Linda prepared a simple dinner: rice, beans, grilled chicken and salad. And the three of them ate together in the kitchen, informally like a real family. December arrived, bringing with it the typical warmth of California summer and a profound transformation in the routine of the Beverly Hills mansion. The weeks that followed the imprisonment of Victoria and Dr. Thompson were marked by a slow but necessary healing process, both physical and emotional, for Richard. And Mary, the first challenge was dealing with the chemical dependency that Richard had developed from the medications prescribed by the fake psychiatrist. Dr. Helen Johnson, a reputable psychiatrist referred by the hospital where Richard held his clinics, took over the detox treatment. She was a middle-aged woman with grey hair and a maternal demeanor that inspired trust. "The process won't be easy, Richard," she explained during the first consultation in her office. A cozy environment decorated with plants and serene paintings. Michael Thompson was administering doses of benzodiazepines 3 times higher than recommended. Your body has developed a physical and psychological dependency. Richard, sitting in the comfortable chair of the office, had deep dark circles under his eyes, and his hands still trembled periodically. "Doctor, I feel like an idiot. How could I have been so blind?" "You were vulnerable after the loss of your wife, and they took advantage of that criminally. There's no blame on your part. The important thing now is to focus on your recovery." In the first 2 weeks of December, Richard went through difficult moments. The withdrawal symptoms included intense anxiety, insomnia, excessive sweating, and episodes of irritability. It was Linda who became the pillar of support for the family during this time. "Aunt Linda, why is Daddy always nervous now?" Mary asked one sunny morning while they had breakfast on the back porch. The girl was visibly more flushed and cheerful since she stopped taking the fake vitamins, but she still showed anxiety about her father's behavior. "Your dad is recovering from some medications that were bad for him, sweetheart," Linda explained, serving fresh mango smoothies she had prepared. "It's like when you have a cold and need to take bitter medicine to get better. It's tough at first, but then you feel good." "And will he be like he was before?" "Yes, dear. In fact, he will be even better, because now he knows you need him." During this time, Mrs. Carmen Anderson became a constant presence in the house. The matriarch of the family, who had felt guilty for not noticing the warning signs earlier, dedicated herself fully to supporting her grandchildren. "Linda, my daughter," she said one afternoon, while helping prepare a calming tea for Richard, "I want you to know that our family owes you an eternal debt. Without your courage and intuition, we would have lost what we love most." "Mrs. Carmen, you don't need to blame yourself," Linda replied, stirring the chamomile tea with honey. "The important thing is that everything turned out well. It's not over yet. We have a lot of work ahead to heal the wounds that snake caused." And indeed, there was much work to be done. Richard needed to temporarily step away from managing the medical clinics, leaving the management in the hands of his partner, Dr. Patricia Noguera. This allowed him to focus exclusively on his recovery and rebuilding his relationship with Mary. One of the most significant changes was Richard's decision to start family therapy with Mary. Dr. Robert Smith, a child psychologist specializing in trauma, began seeing father and daughter twice a week in his office in the Westwood neighborhood. "It's important that you process together everything that happened," Dr. Smith explained during the first session. "Mary, you went through very frightening experiences, and it's normal to feel fear or confusion. Sometimes I dream that Victoria is trying to push me into the pool," Mary confessed, holding her father's hand. "I wake up screaming and can't sleep anymore." "And how do you feel when that happens?" the psychologist asked. "Scared, and angry too, because she lied to Daddy. She said she liked me, but she really wanted to hurt me." Richard squeezed his daughter's hand, his eyes misty. "Sweetheart, I promise I will never let anyone hurt you again. Daddy will always be here." During the therapy sessions, it became clear that Mary had perceived much more than the adults imagined. She recounted episodes where she pretended to sleep, to overhear strange conversations from Victoria on the phone, moments when she felt forced to eat or drink things that made her sick, and above all, the constant feeling that something was wrong in the house. "Children are very intuitive," Dr. Smith explained to Richard after a session. Mary instinctively knew that it was in danger, but she had no way to verbalize or protect herself alone. That's why Linda's presence was so crucial. It was during one of those conversations that Richard made a decision that would completely change the dynamics of the household. One December afternoon, after a particularly productive therapy session, he sought Linda in the kitchen where she was preparing dinner. "Linda, can I talk to you?" "Of course, Mr. Richard." "Is there a problem?" He sat on the kitchen island stool, a gesture that would have been unthinkable before. The boss didn't sit in the kitchen to talk to the maid, but everything had changed. "I want to make you a proposal," he said seriously. "I no longer want you to be our maid." Linda stopped cutting the vegetables, her heart racing. Are you firing me?" "No, no," Richard laughed. "On the contrary, I want you to officially be the guardian of Mary and the manager of this house, with a compatible salary, full labor rights, and most importantly, with the recognition that you are part of this family." Linda sat heavily on the stool next to him, her legs weak. "Mr. Richard, I don't know what to say." "Say you accept. Mary needs you. I need you. You saved our lives, Linda, literally. And more than that, you showed us what true and unconditional love is." "But I only have a high school diploma, Mr. Richard. I don't know if I'm ready for such a big responsibility." "You have something much more important than any diploma, a heart that knows how to love and protect. And besides, we will provide training courses, everything you need." That night, Linda called her 3 children, Tyler, 28, who had managed to leave the world of crime and now worked as a mechanic, Amanda, 24, a pedagogy student, and John, 20, who was studying electronics. She told them about the proposal and asked for advice. "Mom, you deserve this and much more," Amanda said, her voice filled with emotion. "I have always admired your strength and dedication. Now you have the chance to have a better life. And besides, we can see how you talk about Mary," John added. "You already love that girl as if she were your daughter." Tyler, who had always been the most reserved of the 3, got straight to the point. "Mom, accept this proposal before they change their minds. This family recognized your worth. It's rare for that to happen." The next day, Linda officially accepted. Richard prepared all the legal documents, establishing her as Mary's legal guardian and the official manager of the residence, with a salary 5 times higher than what she earned as a domestic worker. The most symbolic change was Linda leaving the back room and moving into the guest suite. On the 2nd floor, a spacious and comfortable environment, with a private bathroom and a view of the garden. Mary insisted on helping to decorate the room, choosing floral curtains and organizing photos of Linda's family on the shelves. "Now you live close to me," the girl cheered, jumping on Linda's new bed. "And when I have nightmares, I can run to your room." "You can, sweet pea. Now we really are a family." During Christmas that year, the house had a celebration completely different from previous years. Instead of the formal and cold dinner that was traditional, Linda organized a typical Californian feast: roasted ham, banana stuffing, rice with nuts, sautéed kale, and the traditional codfish that she had learned to make from her own mother. Mrs. Carman arrived at 6 in the evening, carrying gifts and the king cake that was a family tradition. Linda's children were invited and arrived shy but happy to meet their mother's new reality. "So you are the famous Mary," Amanda said, kneeling to be at the girl's height. "My mum can't stop talking about you." "And you are Aunt Linda's daughter who studies to be a teacher," Mary replied excitedly. She said, "You will help me with my homework when I need it." During the feast, Richard made an emotional toast. "This year, we learned what really matters in life. We learned that family is not defined by blood or money, but by love, protection, and mutual care. Linda, you taught us this." For the first time in many months, the Bel Air mansion was filled with genuine laughter, warm conversations, and the feeling that a real family lived there. But there was still one last chapter to be written in this story of transformation and new beginnings. January 2025 arrived with the intense heat of summer and a sense of renewal that permeated every corner of the mansion. The 3 months following Christmas were marked by profound changes that solidified the new family dynamic and began to shape the future everyone had dreamed of, but had not yet dared to verbalize. Richard had successfully completed the detox program and gradually returned to work. Dr. Helen Johnson reduced the consultations to once a week, and he exhibited an energy and mental clarity he hadn't had in years. More importantly, his relationship with Mary had completely transformed. "Dad, today at school the teacher asked about professions, and I said I want to be a doctor like you," Mary told Richard one Saturday morning as they had breakfast on the porch. She was wearing a yellow dress with small flowers and white sneakers, her face flushed and her eyes sparkling with the joy of a truly happy child. "Really, Princess? And why?" Richard asked, setting aside the newspaper to give his full attention to his daughter, a habit he had developed in recent weeks. "Because you help people get better. And Aunt Linda said that helping others is the most important thing in life." Linda, who was preparing acerola and beetroot smoothies in the kitchen, smiled upon hearing the conversation. In recent months, she had dedicated herself. Not only Linda was practically caring for Mary, but also for her moral and emotional education, something the girl had lost during the traumatic months with Victoria. The household routine had established itself naturally and harmoniously. Linda woke up at 6 in the morning, prepared a nutritious breakfast for everyone, took Mary to school in one of the family cars. Richard had insisted she get a driver's license, and during the day managed the household, did the shopping, and still found time to study. One of the most significant changes was Richard's decision to hire a private tutor for English and computer skills for Linda. Maria Fernanda, a young teacher of 28, came to the house 3 times a week for lessons. "Mrs. Linda, you have an incredible ability to learn," Maria Fernanda commented during a Tuesday lesson. "In 3 months, you can already hold basic conversations in English and perfectly master computer programs." "It's because now I have a real reason to learn," Linda replied, focused on the laptop that Richard had bought for her. "I want to be able to help Mary with any subject she needs." Mary, in turn, was flourishing in every aspect. Her nightmares had drastically decreased, especially after Linda had completely redecorated her room, removing any reminders of the dark period with Victoria. Now the environment was cheerful and colourful, with shelves full of books, a little drawing corner, and family photos scattered on the walls. The school also noticed the transformation. Sister Catherine, the principal of St. Mary's Academy, where Mary studied, called Richard for a conversation in February. "Mr. Anderson, the change in Mary since the end of last year is impressive," said the nun, a woman in her 60s with a kind demeanour. "She has always been a good student, but now she shows a joy and confidence that we haven't seen in a long time." "We went through a very difficult period, Sister Catherine," But now we have Linda taking care of her, and that has made all the difference. I can see that. The girl speaks of Aunt Linda with a fondness and admiration that is touching. You have found a treasure in this woman. Indeed, Linda's influence on Mary's education went far beyond basic care. She had introduced values into the girl's life that had been fundamental in her own upbringing: respect for elders, gratitude for small things, solidarity with those who have less, and above all, the importance of honesty and the courage to do what is right. "Aunt Linda, why did that mean woman want to hurt me?" Mary asked one afternoon while they were baking a chocolate cake for a snack. It was a question Linda had anticipated for months, and she had thought carefully about how to respond in a way that a 10-year-old could understand without losing faith in human kindness. "You know, sweetheart, sometimes people do bad things because they're scared or because they want things that aren't theirs," Linda explained, measuring the flour. Victoria had many doubts and thought she could solve her problems in the wrong way, but that doesn't excuse what she did. "And why did you realize she was bad and Dad didn't?" "Because your father is a good man who always sees the best in people. He couldn't imagine that someone could harm an innocent child. But I, as a mother for many years, have learned to always be alert to anything that might threaten the people I love. Do you really love me?" "More than anything in this world, my daughter." It was the first time Linda called Mary my daughter, and both felt the emotion of the moment. From that day on, this is how Mary referred to Linda when speaking to her classmates at school. "My mother Linda said, I will ask my mother Linda." For Richard, watching this relationship develop was both moving and revealing. He began to realize that his feelings for Linda went far beyond gratitude for saving his family. There was a deep admiration for her strength, intelligence, and kindness, and an attraction that grew stronger with each passing day. The decisive moment came one night in March, during a typical storm at the end of summer. Mary had had a nightmare, a rare occurrence, but one that still happened occasionally, and ran to Linda's room. The two talked late into the night, and when the girl finally fell asleep, Linda carried her back to her room. Richard was in the hallway when she left his daughter's room, and they met halfway, illuminated only by the flashes of lightning coming through the windows. "Is she okay?" he asked softly. "Yes, she is. It was just a little nightmare. Soon she won't have any more." They stood in the hallway for a few seconds, aware of the physical and emotional closeness that had developed between them. It was Richard who should step back, return to his room, maintain the social distances that society expected. But he couldn't. "Linda," he said, his voice choked, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Have you ever thought about having a family of your own again? A partner, maybe more children?" Linda looked him in the eyes, seeing a vulnerability he rarely showed. "Why the question?" Because I can no longer imagine my life and Mary's life without you. And it's not just gratitude, Linda. It's something more." The silence that followed was filled with unspoken possibilities. Linda felt the same, but she also felt the weight of the social, educational, and economic differences that separated them. "Mr. Anderson," she finally said, "you are a wonderful man, and I have also developed feelings I shouldn't have, but we come from different worlds. People will talk, they will judge." "Speak," he interrupted, moving closer. "Do you think after everything we've been through, I care about what others will think? You saved my daughter and taught me what true love is. The rest is just noise." That night, there were no kisses or dramatic declarations. There was only the mutual understanding that something had changed forever between them, and that it would take time and care to define how to move forward. In the following weeks, Richard began to court her in a respectful yet determined manner, Flowers appeared in her room without explanation. Books she had mentioned wanting to read showed up on her study desk, and he found small excuses to spend more time talking with her. The first official date took place in April, on a Saturday afternoon, when Mary was spending the day with Mrs. Carman. Richard invited Linda to dinner at Taste Van Restaurant, one of the most elegant places in town, located in Westwood. "I feel out of place here," Linda confessed, adjusting the navy blue dress she had bought especially for the occasion. "You look beautiful," Richard said sincerely, "and if anyone here is worth anything, it's you and me. The rest is just scenery." During dinner, they talked about dreams, future plans, and for the first time openly addressed the possibility of a serious relationship. "Linda, I want to be very clear about one thing," Richard said, holding her hand across the table. "If we decide to move forward with this, it will be as equals. You won't be my employee who became my girlfriend. You will be the woman I choose to share my life with all the respect and admiration that entails. And what if it doesn't work out? What if we find out we're very different? Then we'll face it together, like two mature people. But Linda, do you really think we're different after everything we've been through?" She smiled, finally relaxing. "No. I think in what matters, we're very much alike." Their official dating began that night, but it was kept discreet out of respect for Mary and everyone's adjustment process. The girl, however, noticed the change in the atmosphere and was visibly happy with the growing closeness between the two people she loved most in the world. In May, during a Sunday afternoon in the garden, she asked the question everyone was waiting for. "Dad, are you going to marry Aunt Linda?" Richard and Linda exchanged glances, smiling. "And if I did, would you approve?" he asked. "Of course. Then she would be my real mom, not just in my heart." And so, with the blessing of the most important person in their lives, Richard and Linda began to plan a future that just months before seemed impossible, but now revealed itself as the natural destiny of a family forged not by blood, but by love, protection, and mutual care. June arrived, painting Beverly Hills with the vibrant colors of California's winter, crystal blue skies, dry air, and mild temperatures inviting outdoor celebrations. It was the month of the summer festival, a tradition that the Anderson family hadn't celebrated in years, but which Linda had proposed to revive as a way to celebrate not only California traditions, but also the new chapter they were writing together. The mansion's backyard was transformed into a true festival ground, colorful banners strung between the trees, a bonfire in the center of the garden surrounded by logs serving as benches, improvised stalls with typical foods, and a small stage where a local band would perform. Linda insisted on personally cooking all the delicacies: creamy corn pudding, sweet and savory corn pudding, crunchy peanut candy, spiced hot apple cider with ginger and cinnamon, and her specialty, cornbread with anise that melted in the mouth. "Aunt Linda, can I wear that summer festival outfit you bought for me?" Mary asked, practically bouncing with excitement. At 10, almost 11, she had become a confident and radiant girl, with rosy cheeks and bright eyes reflecting the genuine happiness of someone who felt loved and protected. "Of course, sweetheart. You'll look beautiful as a country girl," Linda replied, fixing a bow in the girl's hair. "And don't forget to put on red lipstick and those little dots on your cheeks I taught you." The party was set to start at 7 in the evening, but since mid-afternoon, final preparations were bustling around the house. Richard, dressed in a plaid shirt, suspenders, and a straw hat, helped organize the tables and test the sound system. It was impressive how he seemed like a completely different man, relaxed, smiling, genuinely engaged with the domestic details he had previously delegated entirely to the staff. "My son, you are unrecognizable," Mrs. Carman commented, arriving loaded with homemade sweets prepared in her kitchen. At 72, she maintained an enviable energy and had become the biggest enthusiast of Richard and Linda's relationship. "I haven't seen you this light in years." "That's what love does to us, isn't it, Mum?" Richard replied, looking at Linda, who was tasting the seasoning of the hot apple cider in the kitchen. She was wearing a blue and white dress, her hair styled in 2 braids with colourful ribbons, and an embroidered apron that had belonged to her own mother. The first guests arrived promptly at 7. Besides Linda's family, Tiago, with his new girlfriend, Amanda, with her college boyfriend, and João, who had brought 2 friends from his technical course, Richard's medical clinic partners, some neighbours from Bel Air, Mary's school friends, and several people who had become important in their lives during the past months of rebuilding were present. Dr. Robert Smith, the psychologist who had accompanied the family therapy, arrived with his wife and 2 small children. "Richard, Linda, what a joy to be here. It's wonderful to see how you've built a genuine family." Officer Johnson also attended, this time without... Richard was reflecting on the professional weight of the case he had investigated. "Linda, my dear, you continue to be my favorite heroine," he joked, tasting a piece of corn pudding. "And I must say I've never seen a case have such a beautiful ending." The party flowed naturally when, around 9 o'clock in the evening, the moment everyone had been waiting for, yet had not been officially announced, finally arrived. Richard stepped onto the small makeshift stage and asked for everyone's attention. "Everyone, thank you so much for being here with us on this special night," he began, visibly emotional. "This past year has been, let's say, it has been a roller coaster for our family. We have gone through very difficult times that taught us the value of true people in our lives." Linda was at the foot of the stage, holding Mary's hand, both suspecting what was to come. "I want to take this opportunity, surrounded by the people we love, to make a very important announcement," Richard continued. "Linda Johnson, you have transformed our house into a true home. You literally saved our lives. But more than that, you taught us what it means to love unconditionally." He stepped down from the stage and knelt before Linda, pulling a small box from his pocket. The entire gathering fell silent, only the sound of the crackling fire and soft background music playing. "Linda, will you marry me? Not because I'm rich or you are poor, not out of gratitude or convenience, but because you are the woman I choose to share my entire life with, in joys and sorrows, as equals and partners." Tears rolled down Linda's face as she looked at the man kneeling before her, then at Mary, who was jumping for joy beside her, and finally at all those people who had become her new extended family. "I do," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I do because you have shown me that true love sees no differences, only the heart of people." The gathering erupted in applause, cheers of joy, and emotional hugs. Mary rushed to embrace both of them, forming a tight family circle that symbolized the bond forged through hardships. The ring was simple, yet elegant, a discreet solitaire that perfectly matched Linda's personality. Richard had consulted Amanda, Linda's daughter, to choose something that her mother would truly wear and appreciate. "When is the wedding?" someone shouted from the crowd. "Next month in September," Richard replied, smiling. "We want a simple ceremony right here at home to celebrate with those who truly matter." The party continued until nearly midnight, filled with lively music, improvised dances, and stories told around the fire. It was impossible not to notice how everyone present was genuinely happy for the union. There was no cynicism, envy, or judgment, just the joy of witnessing a true love that had risen from the ashes of a tragedy. In the days following the summer festival, preparations for the wedding took over the house in a joyful and engaging manner. Linda had insisted on a simple ceremony, but Richard was determined to make it unforgettable in the details that truly mattered. The ceremony was set for September 15th, exactly 1 year after Mary's traumatic birthday that marked the beginning of the end of Victoria's dark plan. It was a symbolic way to transform a painful date into a celebration of life and love. "It's perfect," commented Mrs. Carman during one of the planning meetings. "We are literally turning the most haunted day of last year into the happiest day of this year." The ceremony would take place in the mansion's garden, with Father John officiating the marriage, a young priest who had become a friend of the family during the recovery months. The same garden where Mary had almost been poisoned during her birthday party would now be the setting for a celebration of love and rebirth. Linda chose a simple yet elegant white lace dress that had been specially made for her by a seamstress recommended by Mrs. Carman. Mary would be the maid of honor, wearing a light yellow dress that matched the flowers decorating the garden. During the months of preparation, it became clear to everyone that this wedding represented not just the union of two people, but the consolidation of a new family forged through genuine love, mutual protection, and overcoming seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Mary perfectly summarized the meaning of that moment during a conversation with the school psychologist. "Now I have a complete family again. I have Daddy, who has become affectionate with me again. I have Aunt Linda, who is going to be my official mom. I have Grandma Carmen, and I have Aunt Linda's siblings, who are my siblings too. And the best part? No one here is lying or pretending to like me. Everyone truly loves me." On the eve of the wedding, Linda was in her room arranging the final details when Mary appeared at the door, holding something in her hands. "Aunt Linda, Mom," the girl said, still getting used to the new term, "I wanted to give you something." It was a drawing that Mary had made representing the family. Richard in the center, dressed in a suit, herself on one side holding his hand, and Linda on the other side also holding hands. Everyone was smiling with a large heart drawn above their heads, and the phrase, "My true family," written neatly below. "It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received in my life," Linda said, hugging the girl tightly. "And do you know why? Because it came from your heart." On the morning of the wedding, September 15, 2025, exactly 15 months after that first night when Linda had accidentally spilled the poisoned juice, the Bel Air mansion woke up transformed. The garden was decorated with yellow and white flowers, sunflowers, daisies and roses. Chairs, under a canopy adorned with fluttering fabric, white flowers were arranged in a semicircle, and a simple yet elegant altar was set up. At 4 in the afternoon, with the September sun casting a perfect golden light, Linda walked through the garden toward the altar where Richard awaited her. There was no solemn wedding march. She had chosen a song by a popular rock band that spoke of finding someone who completes you. Mary walked ahead, scattering white rose petals along the path. The ceremony was simple, emotional, and deeply meaningful. Father John spoke about how true love often arises from the most unexpected situations, and how family is built not just by blood ties but by the bonds of the heart. "Richard and Linda," he said during the homily, "you show us that love knows no social, economic, or educational barriers. Genuine love sees only the heart, the kindness, the courage of a person, and you have found that in each other." When it was time for personal vows, Richard spoke first. "Linda, you appeared in our lives like a guardian angel disguised as a cook. You saved my daughter, saved me, and taught us that a family is built with love, care, and mutual protection. I promise to be your partner in all joys and difficulties, to always respect you as my equal, and to love you for the rest of my life." Linda, with tears in her eyes but a steady voice, replied, "Richard, you gave me the chance to start anew, and showed me that I am capable of much more than I imagined. I promise to care for you and Mary with all my love, to be your faithful companion, and to build with you a family based on truth, affection, and the protection of those we love." When Father John declared them husband and wife, and Richard kissed Linda under the emotional applause of those present, Mary shouted, "Now we are a real family." The celebration that followed was exactly as they had dreamed, intimate, joyful, filled with homemade food prepared by Linda with the help of Mrs. Carmen, good music, and people who genuinely loved them and celebrated their union. Around 10 at night, as the party began to wind down, Richard, Linda, and Mary sat on the garden swing, the same one where the girl used to play before all the nightmares began. "Do you know what the best part of all this is?" Mary said, nestled between the two. "It's that now, when I tell people about my family, it will all be true. My dad who loves me, my mom who protects me, my grandma who spoils me, and my siblings who play with me." Richard and Linda exchanged glances over the girl's head, both reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. From a dark night in July, when a cook followed her maternal instinct and saved a child from a terrible fate, to this bright September night when a true family celebrated not just a marriage, but the triumph of love over evil. "And you know what else?" Mary continued, yawning. "Now I can sleep peacefully every night, because I know you two are here to protect me." That night, after Mary went to bed, Richard and Linda stayed on the porch talking about the future. They discussed plans to expand the family, perhaps adopting a child in need of love, about the idea of turning part of the house into a temporary home for at-risk children, and how to use the painful experiences they had lived through to help other families. "You know, our story will inspire many people, right?" Richard said, holding the hand of his now wife. "I think the most important lesson is that true love sees no social position, bank account, or diploma," Linda replied. "It sees only character, the kindness of the heart, and the ability to protect those we love. And that sometimes angels come disguised as cooks." From the backyard came the fragrance of the flowers that adorned the wedding, mingled with the scent of the wet earth from the light rain that had begun to fall. It was a perfect ending to a perfect day, marking not the end of a story, but the beginning of a new life for a family that had discovered that true love is built not with beautiful words or empty promises, but with gestures of protection, daily care, and the courage to do what is right, even when it is difficult. 15 months after that first night in July, when a cook had followed her maternal instinct and prevented a tragedy, the mansion in Bel Air housed not just a rebuilt family, but a living example that genuine love always finds a way to triumph over darkness. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and if you watched until here, comment "I watched until here" and share your opinion about this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the final screen. It's very emotional.